Hi, I'm Wyatt.
And I'm Grace.
And you're listening to our dad and your host of the Vacation Rental Revolution podcast.
All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the Odyssey Vacation Rental Revolution podcast. I'm your host, Shawn Moore, and we are back with another short-term rental investment story for you. I've got John and Lauri Hinshaw, and they are going to talk to us about their journey into short-term rental investing. So, John and Lauri, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Vacation Rental Revolution podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yes, our pleasure.
Absolutely. So I always like to like these episodes are kind of always the same, where we just have a conversation about your journey into it. And I always, before we hit record, I always say, is there anything that you do or don't want to talk about? And everybody always says, no, we're an open book. Let's talk about the good, the bad, the ugly. So let's rewind the clock a little bit, because there's always challenges, right? And it's my goal here is always with these podcasts and these interviews or anything that we're doing coaching people is because there's pros and cons in every asset class. And we're not here to tell you that short-term rentals are always, it's always sunshine and rainbows and pots of gold at the end of the rainbow, right? And so we want to talk about all of it. And so people can walk into this game with their eyes wide open. And so I'm really excited to hear about your guys' story of perseverance and walking through this process. But let's take us back. Tell us where you're from, kind of what pays the bills, and then what got you interested into short-term rentals originally.
Yeah, so we are from the Pacific Northwest. Both grew up in the Seattle area, and mostly for the past 25 years have called Boise, Idaho home. I've had a couple of side excursions, but this is where we call home. I've spent my entire career working for suppliers to the building industry, building material suppliers. Currently hold an executive management position with a company that is locally manufactures, distributes all types of building materials for primarily the residential and commercial construction industry.
Awesome. Lauri,
Yeah, I do work, but I work from home. I work
Okay.
for an HOA property management company, and I work in accounting. So
Nice.
that's what I
So
do.
not short-term rental HOA management, right? Yeah.
Right, that's correct.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, so let's dive into, we were talking a little bit off camera of kind of what got you interested in short-term rentals, and tell us, Boise area, we were talking about kind of the markets that you're attracted to. Tell us a little bit about what got you interested in short-term rentals, and really it was kind of more of the lifestyle asset rather than just strictly as an investment, correct?
Right. Yeah. So when we first moved to Southern Idaho, everybody learns about a cool mountain resort town that's a couple hours north of us, town by the name of McCall. It's kind of the Sun Valley of West Central Idaho. And we always had a dream of owning a vacation home there, but really never could see ourselves, affording something like that. But in 2000, I think it was 2007, we bought into a fractional vacation home in that town. For us, it seemed like it was at the time, it really was. It was a good fit for us financially, as opposed to owning a home outright. And it gave us the amount of time that we felt like, we could spend, in a vacation home, because, we were both, working busy full-time people. And that was early 2008 when the Great Recession kind of came along, and that was about a 12-14 year journey owning, being a part of that. Had its ups and downs, but through all that, we loved our time there. We loved the property that we had. We fell in love with that market. It's just a cool place. And but long story, the development and the other owners that we had in the homes that we were in ended up selling it. This was in 2020, so 3 years ago, kind of right before the market went nuts.
Yeah.
Up there. And we left that home and started to sit back and think, okay, what's our next move, in that market to own a vacation home of our own someday.
Nice. So you, when you decided, that was in 2020, kind of bad timing if it was early 2020 when you sold, right? Got out of that one, but that's okay. We don't always time markets correctly, right? I've had plenty
in hindsight, I wish I had bought out that home that we were in. But honestly, I didn't know then that you could do 10% second home loans.
Right. Now, and we have to, things happen for a reason. We learn along the way. Sometimes those learning lessons can be expensive, and just not knowing, right? And so it's not. So when you did sell that, did you immediately, were you guys talking to each other like, hey, how do we get back into this? Take us through that process. Were you both on board? Laurie, were you as really, were you having that seller's remorse and saying, hey, we were really missing this cabin. What can we do to make this happen again?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we love the area, so we definitely missed, we missed an opportunity there. But so we were trying to think of ways what can we do? Where can we go? And then John, I'll let him start it, but that's how we got involved with Odyssey.
Well, we really thought, again, that particular point in time, we sold the house and then the market went nuts, and we were quickly, going to get, appeared like we were going to get priced out of that market, and the dream was dead, to be honest with you. And I think it was about a year and a half later, I saw a Facebook ad about Odyssey and started checking it out. Actually didn't, join right away. I think my first call was with Amy Stevens.
Yeah.
And I was in the middle of another property that I owned that I was invested in, that I was in the process of closing. And she said, well, why don't you wait until you're done with that and call us back?
Yeah.
And
let's wrap one thing up before we jump into another, right?
She was really smart in doing that. Yeah. But we, and I was familiar with the vacation rental market up there, because the property manager that we had in this fractional home, I'd gotten to know pretty well. And after seeing your, presentation, it dawned on us, we might be able to do this. We could own a property up there and get other people to help pay for it.
Yeah.
And honestly, that was our goal.
Yeah.
Right. And that's an important goal to bring up, like we were talking about, knowing what your property goals are, knowing what type of a buyer you are. Hey, we're a lifestyle buyer. We would love to own a cabin up in the mountains again. It's a market. Those of you that are listening, maybe you're familiar, maybe you're not. Most of the Intermountain West is very difficult to make a lot of money on these properties because they're super expensive markets to get into versus the revenue they generate. They're typically pretty seasonal because of the winters that we have out here. And so they're markets that a break-even property is a good deal a lot of times. And it allows you to buy properties that you can use. And if that's not your goal, that's okay. But you guys are saying, hey, listen, we wanted to get into a market that we're really starting to get priced out of, but we have the potential to be able to get a property and have other people help pay for it. And then we still end up having our mountain, cabin that we can go visit and be able to enjoy those, and these are beautiful areas. I was telling John and Laurie, I've spent a lot of time in these in McCall, and where you guys ended up ultimately buying, which is a little south of McCall. Beautiful, beautiful areas. And it's important to understand that what are your property goals? And sometimes those property goals are just being able to find a property that we can use that gets paid for, right?
Yep.
So that when you decided to jump in, you were starting to still look at McCall, correct?
Yes. Yeah. So we started the course and started our search, and that was our original target market. And I was on listing sites every day, trying to see what was coming up. It was a waste of time to talk to a realtor at that point.
Yeah.
And just looking, seeing what was coming up, what was new, what was hanging around. And, again, was same old problem, quickly learned that we were getting priced out of that market. It was absolutely insane. People bringing suitcases of cash, buying stuff sight unseen, no inspections, rubber stamped appraisals. I told you a little story about, we looked at this really small house. It was we made one offer on another house. You hear about all these people making multiple offers. As many times, this is 2 hours away, so I'm not driving up there every time a house comes up.
Right.
I got it. The one time I did do that, where a realtor didn't preview the house first, went up and looked at it, drove all the way up there. It was a complete dump for the amount of money that they were asking for it. And I said, okay, I got to change how I'm doing this. And but I just was on listing sites every day looking, and was really not coming, made one offer on one house. It was a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, less than 1,000 square feet on 0 lot and parking for 2 cars maybe. And they wanted more than $500,000 for it.
Yeah.
And I mean, and it was an active short-term rental. It was one of those, and the occupancy on it was off the charts. I mean, my realtor didn't believe me when I told her the occupancy on the thing was 90%. But it was so small, it didn't have any internet. The daily rate on the thing was $120. Well, it was, the gross rental on it was maybe $40,000 on a $500,000 house.
Yeah.
It doesn't pencil.
It's losing money.
Yeah.
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 So we made a lowball offer, got laughed at. And so that's when we kind of changed our search area to this area that's south of there, out, that's a little bit more rural. But like you said, it's still in a great location. It's very close to an up and coming destination ski resort that fell on hard times, during the Great Recession. It's making a comeback now. Prices were better there, but pickings were still, pretty slim. I mean, I was even stomping around every lot I could find up there to see. I got to figure out, how do I get in this game, even if I had to build it.
Yeah.
And then this property came up, and this was like mid-July of 2021. So coming up almost 2 years ago. It was still way over our budget, and it was a lot bigger than what we really had originally envisioned. I mean, it was 4 bedrooms, 4 baths on 1/3 of an acre. But I kept watching it because it had come on market. It went under contract and went back on market a couple different times. And that took a couple of months, and now it's getting to be October, and winter's, starting to close in.
Yeah.
And that's when I finally went and looked at it. And it was a cool rustic log cabin that fit the vibe that we wanted. But it was dated, and it needed some remodel just to make it functional for a short-term rental. Things like bathroom, one full bathroom full remodel the kitchen, added a deck and a hot tub that it didn't have. And I looked over every square inch of that house trying to figure out what were these other buyers spooked by.
Right.
I mean, every square inch of the crawl space, where's the water intrusion, whatever it is, because I'm not going to get the thing inspected either.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm curious, when you guys decided to move markets, did it feel like it took any wind out of your sails, or were you guys, hey, we really like this market too? I know sometimes when we have our sights set, especially as a lifestyle asset buyer, and we're buying it to use it, and we have our sights set on a specific market that we really love, when we have to move a little bit, sometimes we lose a little steam and we get a little discouraged. I'm curious, were you guys in that situation at all, or were you just like, hey, listen, we're okay moving, and we like this market just as much?
I think the thing that was a little concerning was, it was not right in the hub of where all the activity is.
Yeah.
The nearest grocery store is 15 miles away. How would that impact, the numbers? How would that impact the rentals? But moving south actually, had some blessings there. It moved us really right in the heart of what's known as Valley County up there.
Yeah.
Where you've got, I mean, it's a different lake, but there's another lake right there. Yeah. It ends up being at a place that is more rural, more quiet. If somebody's just wanting to get away and not be in the bustle of a busy resort town, that is the sweet spot for them. It's perfect.
Yeah. And it's actually a little closer and easier to get to from Boise, right? Because you're actually closer to Boise. So you get closer. Yeah. Right. So which is really where most people are coming from to visit these areas, right? And so it's interesting because it actually gets you a little bit closer to where people are driving from.
Yeah, it's 20 minutes closer. And the reality is, I mean, the other places that are around there, I mean, McCall is still a 15-minute drive. It's not crazy. You say if you want to go to the grocery store, you're going to McCall anyway.
Right.
So.
Right. Yeah, you're going up there anyway. And it's and I remember when you were kind of looking at this property, it was going into the slower season, right? And that was, that's always a concern. People always, wonder, okay, I'm just finished my busy season. People just backed out. So you got some doubts in the back of your mind. Like, what did I miss on the inspection? Why did they leave? And I'm interested in it. I'm going into the slow season. So there's some things in the back of your minds probably thinking, okay, do we really want to move forward here? Right. And there's also, I always think there's benefits of moving forward in the slow going into the slow season, especially when you mentioned you have things to do, right? Because you don't have that pressure of, holy crap, I'm losing out on a ton of revenue while I'm getting this stuff done. And we had those conversations as well. What are some of the other as that you're buying that first one, you're deciding whether to make the offers, what are some of the other things going through your head and that you're really concerned about?
Go ahead.
Well, besides, going into this house with no inspection and that a couple of buyers have been spooked already. I did as much of the due diligence, as I could to make sure that I wasn't, that what we ended up buying and what we could turn it into was going to be what, we wanted the end result vision to be. And I didn't see anything that I couldn't deal with. So that's when we decided to make an offer. And we also wrote a letter to the sellers, telling them why we wanted the house, and not because we were trying to make a short-term rental out of it. This was a vacation home, a dream of ours and our family. And we also explained, why we needed to be at a certain price point.
Yeah.
One of the factors at that particular time was at what they're asking for, we would have been in kind of jumbo loan territory, which would have gotten, way more expensive.
Right.
And they accepted it. We counted a little bit, but it wasn't a ton, but we accepted it, and we were scheduled to close right before Christmas. And the next trepidation we had then was I ended up getting a health scare and required some tests that were going to take about a month to get to even get in and get done and get some results. And I remember talking to you about it then.
Yeah.
Lori, she was like,
It's a sign that we can't go forward with this. We just back out. Let's back out. You're more important than getting this house.
So how we get, take us through that.
Yeah.
Well, we called the realtor to tell him we needed to back out.
Yeah.
But the sellers ended up being really cool.
They wanted us to have
the house. They were willing to extend the closing date a couple of months. It assured us we'd get our earnest money back if something fell through. And they were just super nice people about it. And so that's what we did. My test came out fine, and we closed on it in February of last year. And then the real adventure started.
Then the work started, right? We thought you were going through an adventure. It wasn't quite, you didn't know what you were starting, right?
Yeah.
Right.
But it's great to hear that the test came back positive and everything was good. And so we were able to move forward, and it was nice. I remember having those conversations with you at that time, and it was nice that the sellers would say, hey, listen, go figure it out. Yeah. Like you said, you're more important than this house right now. Go make sure that everything works out. And it always is nice to be able to work with people like that. And I think, like you guys said, having that personal connection in the front end when you're making offers and negotiating that stuff makes a big deal, and you don't know when it's going to kick in. And that's a good example of not something that happens all the time, but it's nice to be able to work together through that. And so now the adventure does start. So that was in February. So we're still middle of the winter up there, smack dab in the middle of the winter. It sounds like there were some things that you guys planned on doing. So take us through the real start of the adventure now.
Yeah. So even before then, when I first started looking at it in the fall, I brought a contractor with me to, look at the scope of the remodel, we wanted to complete because of the industry I'm in. I was able to supply a lot of the materials, myself, and he was going to provide the labor and then some subs that, things that I don't do, electrical, plumbing, things like that. And based on my experience, I figured the labor, cost was going to be, I don't know, around $60,000, and we'd probably be in this $100,000 all in. He played around with the thing for a couple of months. The contractor ended up getting COVID. Literally from the time we we're under contract with the house to now we're into first part of January. We're a month before it closes. He comes back and tells me that his labor price is $278,000.
Whew.
Not
Close. I
kidding.
guess he was really close, but just a little off.
I am
Gee.
not kidding. I have no idea what planet he was on. I mean, obviously,
Wow.
he really didn't want the work. But so, here we are a month before closing, and I've got no contractor. And and all the contractors that I knew, as connected as I am in the industry, they have a backlog of work for 2 years.
Yeah.
So I did end up hiring the first 3 months. I ended up hiring 2 contractors, fired them both for non-performance. One of them I fired twice. Long story, but he had some of my money that I needed to get from him on the back end. Still failed. And I mean, they were just not showing up, and the clock was ticking.
Mhm.
And by late spring, I figured a project that should take 3 months. We would still, get it ready to go, by summer. But by late spring, I knew we had just lost the summer season.
Yeah.
And I scrambled. I didn't want to be my own general contractor. Didn't have the time. It's too far away. Not that I couldn't. I mean, I'm capable of that, but ended up scrambling, finding subs, anywhere I could. Some led me to others that helped out a lot. I mean, I literally found a plumber sitting at the bar at the local restaurant.
As connected as you are, that's where they come from, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And even some of the subs I did find, I mean, there are endless no-shows, no calls.
Yeah.
Some that literally walked off and just ghosted me at the end, and I ended up having to. I ended up doing way more of the work than I had planned. I mean, I was there. I did not miss a weekend. It took us 8 months. What should have took, I thought 3, took us 8.
Right.
And I didn't miss a weekend. I mean, I drove up and I was working 30 hours in 2 days on the weekends. And it's 180 miles round trip. And I figured I logged, over 8,000 miles driving up and down that mountain road.
Wow.
Every weekend, and then some. There's also times vacation. And we cut it right to the end.
Yeah.
It was mentally and physically, one of the hardest.
Exhausting.
It was exhausting. One of the hardest things I've ever done. And I've been around and I've seen a lot and done a lot.
Right. It's when you tell that, it's one of the biggest lessons that we've seen over the last few years with when you're buying properties in these remote locations. In fact, I was just having a conversation with our designer, Mike Whitfield, about it yesterday. We were saying you really, really have to have good contacts, good contractors, and you have to have about 3 of them, because the ones you think are good, they might not turn out to be as good as you thought, because as much as you want to add the value and, inventory is still super low. And it's the only way we're getting these properties. But when you talk about a 3 month to an 8 month, it's not only that extra time, it's you're paying bills the whole time. First of all, you're also not making any income. And in a mountain town like this, you lose that summer season. That's 80% of your revenue for the year. Right.
Yeah.
And so you really have a whole year of no revenue. And when you don't budget for that and you don't plan for that, and something like that happens, that can be really stressful. So when you talk about it's not just, we had to battle through 8 months of this and driving up and down. Financially, it's a strain because we weren't planning on that, right? We're planning on that 3 months, and then we're planning on maybe another 2 or 3 of reserves to pay bills while we're launching a property, not 8 months and then the launch, right?
Yeah, and then going way over budget on what you thought you were going to put into the thing too.
Yeah.
And then while I'm doing this, Laurie's just going crazy sourcing. I mean, the house came furnished, but we pretty much took everything out of it, started over.
Yeah.
And Laurie was the one that was behind all that.
So that's a whole nother project, right, Laurie? That's that's totally different than the construction side of it, where now we're getting involved in the setup and the design and what we're going to have to make sure this experience is great for our guests, and getting the property ready to go while you're under the gun, because you can't really do any of that until the property's kind of put together and ready to go, you can do it. You can try to plan it out as much as possible. But there's certain things that the house has to be ready for, right?
Right.
And so, did you just kind of piece it together yourself? Did you have help with that? How did that process go?
I mean, I did a lot of it myself, but we did hook up with Mike Woodfield as far as, creating an adventure.
Okay.
The experience.
Of, staying at our place. He did help us with some, artwork, and he led us to, I can't remember the guy's name, that got us some blinds. And, I mean, he was a big help in that, but I spent hundreds of hours online looking for furniture and whatever I could find that'll work.
Yeah, we're buying it. We're putting it in storage. To your point, we got no place to put it until the house is done. Right?
So it's in storage. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is February-ish. We're getting to the end of now 20. I mean, was that the end of 2022 that we're starting to get to the end of? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so when did you actually launch it then? What was the launch date for you guys?
Yeah. So we finally went live last November.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, I was working on the house the last weekend and we had guests coming in on Monday.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Because it was live. It was, yeah. And, we did not want to miss the holiday season. I mean,
Right.
absolutely, we got to do whatever it takes to get this thing ready to go and launch, because even once you get it furnished and everything, you still got pictures, you still got to get your listing up, you still got to get the property manager on board to get all that done. And so it was, a scramble to the end there to get it ready for the holidays.
And then, so when you did launch it, how did the launch go for the holidays? Did you have a good holiday season?
Yeah, it booked right away for Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's.
Yeah.
And then it was a little slow to start, and then boom. I mean, we were booked through the holidays, and we were booked every weekend through the middle of March.
It was at the ski season. Are people going up there to ski at the?
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So it's and now you've got the kind of the melt off where it's probably a little bit slow, right? The kind of the resorts are starting to shut down and it's not quite summertime up there yet, right?
Right. Surprisingly, though, I mean, we're 50% booked in this month in May.
Are you really?
In shorter
that's
season.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really good for a mountain area, right?
Yeah.
So
I mean, our property we have a full service property manager, and they're blown away by how well it's done.
it's awesome. So a lot of it, a lot of hard work, a lot of, perseverance through the construction, the setup, everything else. And then the launch phase, right? Let's talk about a little bit on the launch, because the launches, even though it booked right away, it sounds like, everything is great. People are loving the property. It's doing well as far as getting bookings and everything, but there's always that learning curve with working with new property managers and trying to figure out how to fit into their system and how we want them to work with our properties to maximize and things like that. Talk to us about a little bit about that kind of relationship, because I'm a big proponent of full service property managers. People who listen to me hear that all the time, but it's a learning curve, right? It's like trying to figure out how this relationship's going to go and try to figure it out. And we're still kind of in the beginning stages of that, trying to figure out if it's going to be the right, the right fit.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's always a work in progress with a property manager. The good news about us is we were friends with the property manager before, so we already had a relationship with her company. But even that, it's the term I used earlier was you still have to inspect what you expect of your property manager.
Yeah,
and that's always kind of a little bit of a constant push and pull with them. And I don't know that that's ever going to stop.
Yeah, I would say I don't know that it does either. Honestly, it's I've been doing this for a long time, and I can count on one hand how many property management relationships I have that I just don't even have to worry about anything, right? And so it's just like any other relationship. I'm going to do things that are going to bug them, and they're going to do things that are going to bug me, and we try to figure it out and work together to where it's good for everybody. and that it works. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, and we have to move on if that's not the case. But you're still definitely, those first few months, you're still figuring each other out, right? And that's not always easy in any new relationship. And like you said, you already know them, but you haven't worked together yet. And this is the first time working together. And this is your guys' baby, right? This is you've put, blood, sweat, tears, time, effort, money, everything you can imagine into this property for the last year almost now, and going through this process. And it's one of their properties, right? It's one of many with property managers. So sometimes it's, as owners, it's hard because we're like, man, this is ours. We want to maximize it. We want you to do this, this, and this. And for their standpoint, on the other side of the coin, it's okay, this is part of our portfolio. We might have a lot of properties and we're going to do certain things, and we try to figure out how that relationship goes. And it's always like you said, it is a give and take. And I don't know that dance ever stops.
Right.
I mean, we've had to take pictures of how I want the beds made.
Yeah.
And so they have a notebook with all of our pictures, so the housekeepers can refer to, this is how the owner wants the beds made. And I mean, It's just those things. Yeah.
Once you get that stuff done though, Laurie, and it does make it easier. I'm a huge fan of just taking pictures how I want stuff set up. We take pictures of our welcome basket. We take pictures of our bedrooms. We take pictures of basically every part of the property how we want it set up. And I think it makes it easier because you guys have already experienced this. Cleaners come and go, and they're really the ones setting the property up. And so many times we're not so lucky to have a cleaner that's always there for the last 3 years, and they know exactly what we want, right? So pictures are a big help for them. And sometimes it seems like, oh man, we're being so picky as owners. Really, it should make their jobs a little bit easier. And so going through that, have you guys been able to enjoy the property? Well, we bought it as kind of a second home. Have you been able to have any fun at it since you've launched it and been able to use it with friends, family, yourselves?
Well,
not a whole lot.
We actually didn't want to go up for a while. We just kind of wanted to just decompress.
Yeah.
But yes, we've gone up a few times and enjoyed it. Yeah.
That's good. And I think that will increase now as the a little time and goes between that, that stressful 8 months that we went through. I remember when I used to play college basketball, and it was always, you played every day, all day, every day. Finally, when I graduated, I was just like, okay, I don't want to touch a basketball. I didn't touch it for a year and a half, 2 years. I was just like, I don't want to see a gym. I don't want to do anything. Right. But now it's like, you start to miss it again, right? It's, there's a reason why we went down that road. And so I'm excited for you guys, hopefully, to be able to use it a little bit as well as get into the summer. Such a beautiful area of the country for sure. And so, and that's ultimately what the property goal was. And I can 100% appreciate when you go through that long of a process of dealing with all of that you're saying, okay, we just want to just let somebody else deal with it for a minute. We just don't, I don't want to drive up that canyon one more time. I don't want to, that will come back though. That's short-lived.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. So we shared a number of different lessons through that. And I think, and I want to just kind of reiterate, one big one is, when you buy a property, if you're thinking about buying these properties in these rural areas, even though you might have all the experience in the world at value add properties and adding, doing construction or understanding that game, if you're not there and you don't have most of these markets, there's not a big network of contractors, frankly. And so they're traveling sometimes, and not everybody wants to travel, especially when they've got business right outside the back door and they don't need to, they've got, like you said, they have 2 years worth of work. That's been the case for a long time. So if you're thinking about buying properties in these areas, you want to double, triple, quadruple check that you've got the right team to be able to make sure that you can get through that project, because it can turn overwhelming really, really quickly, right?
Yeah. Fortunately, I've acquired enough of the skill sets in my career to be able to do a lot of what I did. But wasn't what I planned, and I don't recommend it to most.
Yeah. And you were lucky that you did have those skill sets. There's people that dive into it that don't frankly have the skill sets, and they have to get the professionals to help them. They don't have the option to go do what you did and be able to really, bring it to completion. And so that's a huge lesson. What are are there any other, if you could go back to yourself, 2 years ago and say, okay, before you do this, here's what you need to know, and here's what you need to be aware of, and make sure that you're walking into this with your eyes wide open. And is that the road you want to run down? What would that list look like if you could go have that conversation with yourselves 2 years ago?
I think one. First of all, I kind of went into it with a real estate investor mindset, as well as owning our own property, trying to find something that not only fit our budget, but I felt like I was getting a good deal on.
Yeah.
And that's hard to do in that kind of forensic market.
Yeah.
But knowing what I know today, I would have paid a lot more for something upfront.
Yeah.
That was ready to go instead of going through what we went through.
Yeah. Great point. Because there's always, we're looking at that bottom line number, and we have to look at, okay, what's our that bottom line number after everything's done of what we want to do. Right. And time has to be a part of that.
Right.
Yeah. Laurie, what about you? Anything that comes to mind that you would tell yourself before going into this?
Oh boy. Well, kind of, you touched on it. I mean, make sure that we have people in place, contractors, subcontractors, all in to help out. I mean, that was our biggest obstacle, I believe. And that's why it took the 8 months, was just have those people in place. I mean, John was a lifesaver. He was amazing on how much he could do and what he did.
And I think some of the things that we learned through the course and through the people, I mean, I'll tell everybody out there, the community that you have, online, huge support when it came just to keep taking one step, putting it in front of the other.
Right. I appreciate you saying that. I can't say enough about our community either. I always tell people, we've got the coaching and the course and everything else. The most valuable asset we have is our community, because we can all, you're surrounding yourself with other people running down a similar road, maybe have been through some of the things, but sometimes you just need that encouragement to say, listen, don't look too far down the road. Let's just put one foot in front today.
And even the tools that we know about today that, we didn't know when we started, things like, Matterport, for 3D renderings of a house, doing that before you do a remodel.
Yeah.
So that all the dimensions, how all the furniture is going to fit, all those things going in, so that you're not guessing and always having to go back and remeasure and that couch didn't fit that we just bought.
Yeah. It's I'll tell you, Matterport a lot of people think about it on the back end for the marketing walkthroughs of the properties, but I find it 100% the most valuable on the front end, because of the measurements and the staging and design and making sure things fit. And it makes a huge difference when you're not at the property all the time.
Yeah, I didn't even know what Matterport was before Odyssey. So
right, good, really helpful. So you got through it. We're still in that stage of saying, I'm not sure when I'm going to go back to it yet and go actually enjoy it. But I think that's coming. But you've got your property, you've got the mountain property again, right? You own it. You're not sharing it with a bunch of other people, as far as fractional and things like that. But if you had to go back and you know how hard it's going to be now, would you tell yourself to do it, or would you say we're going to wait it out?
Today, I would say I would wait it out. I mean, there are so many times I asked myself, what was I thinking?
Right. Throughout that whole process, right?
Oh, yeah. But I mean, now at the end, you look back and we see what we created, and we see how much, the success it is having, that obviously other people are enjoying it. I mean, there's a level of satisfaction in that as well, that, I'm not sure it would change my mind. Again, if I were to do it again, I would not get into a remodel.
A remodel, yeah. But would you do it again where you if you could own the property and you're saying, okay, that we're happy with where it turned out and how it's performing now and what we're excited for the future? Is it something that you're saying, man, I just don't know. I don't know that this is the road that we want to keep running down?
I don't know. I mean, we're still not even through our first full year yet.
Yeah.
And honestly, I can't even tell you, if it's going to break even or not.
Right.
But, we're in it for, the long haul as best we can.
Yeah.
Hopefully it does, or it comes close to where, but if we fall short of that, it might be okay. If we fall way short of that, I don't know. We don't know.
Right. So it matters on the numbers, right? And we
Yeah.
haven't seen them yet. We had a good launch. We haven't had a peak season yet. We had a good launch through the holidays and the winter, but really a lot of your revenue is going to come from this summer, going into this summer and seeing how it goes. So yeah, absolutely fair enough question or fair answer to say, we don't know yet, right? It depends on how it performs. And now we need to see. We're done with you're not done with the work, right? There's still going to be things you're doing and making sure that you're still in that launch phase, right? That launch year. I always say your first 12 to 18 months of actually being live are really what determines how this property is going to perform. And we're just barely getting into that. Laurie, what about you? What would you say to yourself about going back, and would you do it again?
My first instinct would say no. But if I was to do it again, definitely I would not want to go through the remodel. Buy something that very little paint, maybe, just very little maintenance for that.
Yeah. Look for more of a turnkey property.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That overwhelm was a lot, right? It's not like we said, it's overwhelm on a lot of fronts, and it can put you in financially, time wise. I mean, you probably didn't plan on every single weekend driving up there and having to do all that stuff, right? So you're putting a lot of other things on hold. Mm-hmm. And so, and it's very similar to conversation that Mike and I were having just yesterday, and just saying, man, it's any time that I'm talking to anybody right now that is walking into a major remodel in a remote area that they're not close to, I'm always like, I'm just saying, hey, that's not what I would do right now. And it's because I've had and heard so many stories like that, it puts yourself in a position that's really, really tough. And so, I mean, you guys have to give yourself credit for getting through that, right? There's a lot of grit and determination, resiliency that goes into that. So there's going to be a point where you're going to look back and you should be proud of that as well, and say, hey, listen, we were able to get through that. And that was really difficult. A lot of people would have thrown in the towel and not actually brought it to completion. And like you said, where you're in it for the long haul. So it's, and seeing how it turns out and being able to get it performing and turn it into the lifestyle asset that you guys hoped it would be. I have high hopes for it. I really, I think you're in a great area. The property turned out amazing, as we always do. Those of you that are listening, you can check out the show notes, and we post the property, so you can go check out and see what John and Laurie did with this property and the area. Go, if you're ever in the area to visit, it's one of my favorite areas to visit. And so beautiful area of the country. And so you guys did an amazing job with the property, and you should be proud of that as well, because it wasn't easy to get it there. But
I'm very proud.
Yeah,
of it.
we are.
We're very proud of it. Yes.
Yeah.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. So we'll wrap this episode up, you guys. As always, I always really, really appreciate always just having these conversations, really candid, upfront, letting people know here's, the good, the bad, the ugly of short-term rental investing, and some of the things that we can avoid if we are going to get into it. And so I'm always very, very appreciative of you guys spending your time with us and with our listeners and sharing that story. Sometimes it's, sometimes it's hard to share some of the hard stories, right? And so I'm always very appreciative of people doing that and being able to come share it with other people that are listening with us. So thank you guys for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Appreciate it, Shawn.
Yep, absolutely. And those of you listening, we know how valuable your time is as well. And so we always appreciate you spending it with us. And I always leave you with one challenge at the end of every episode, and that is to go pick one thing that you can do today to start building that life that you don't want to take a vacation from. Cheers, my friends.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Vacation Rental Revolution podcast. Share this with other people you think need to hear about it. And don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. Hey Grace, is there a website? Yes! For more amazing content and expert advice, visit Vodacy.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.